Naruto, The Akatsuki's 10 Best Fights, Ranked. Relentlessly ambitious, the Akatsuki's goal to gather all Jinchuriki and remake the world has inevitably resulted in dozens of breathtaking battles. The Akatsuki was an organization of rogue shinobi from diverse nations in the Naruto universe. They are particularly intriguing villains since they have battled against much of the series cast, often against opponents who aren't its two most prominent characters. Relentlessly ambitious, their goal to gather all Jinchuriki and remake the world has inevitably resulted in dozens of breathtaking battles, some where the villains were actually successful. The Akatsuki's most memorable conflicts expose these compelling antagonists and the pernicious ways in which they have shaped the world's future. 10. Sasori vs. Kankuro demonstrated the Akatsuki's mysterious power. The Akatsuki's two most active agents at the beginning of Shippuden were Sasori and Deidara. Together, they embarked to the Sand Village and captured Gaara. During their journey, they encountered Kankuro, who was hellbent on protecting his brother. Despite his established mastery of puppets, Sasori was mysteriously more skilled at manipulating them than the hero was. As a result, he was able to strike out the doll's joints, rendering his opponent's weapons worthless and inflicting him with noxious poison. 9. Kisame Itachi's attack outside Konoha put the Jonin to the test. Remarkably, Sasori's exploits were not the first glimpse of the Akatsuki. In the original series, Itachi and Kisame embarked to the Leaf in order to claim Naruto. They were met with the staunch resistance of Kakashi, Might Guy, and Asuma. However, the former was expediently incapacitated by the Uchiha's notorious genjutsu. Nonetheless, the villains were forced to retreat since the battle was bound to draw reinforcements on Konoha's behalf. Without them, it's possible that they could have slain their Jonin adversaries before infiltrating the village. 8. Killer Bee vs. Kisame proved the latter's potential. Kisame was among the Akatsuki's deadliest members for the properties of his sword. Samahata was able to consume chakra, feasting on the energies of his opponent and adding to its master's strength. This turns much of a Jinchuriki's natural power against them, as demonstrated through his fight against Killer Bee. It was also a fantastic gauge for the former mist shinobi's diverse and insidious jutsu, such as his ability to create an all-encompassing water dome and fuse with his sword. Were it not for the fourth Raikage intervention, the Akatsuki could have reasonably claimed the 8 tails for his masters. 7. Deidara vs. Gaara put the Akatsuki's plans in motion. Gaara had been established as a difficult opponent to defeat in the original series. When Deidara arrived to the sand and overcame him in a fight in spite of his allies' best efforts, it shocked the village and fans alike. This conflict would have permanent ramifications. Not only would it cost Chiyo's life in order to resuscitate him, but it would also indelibly separate the Kazekage from his tailed beast. Shikaku. It was an exceptionally ironic fate since he had only made peace with the monster recently. 6. Kisame vs. Might Guy proved what taijutsu can do. Kisame was only difficult to defeat because of how decisively he countered genjutsu and ninjutsu. This left him palpably vulnerable to taijutsu. Though even he would still not go down quietly. After Might Guy had exposed him attempting to reach Naruto, the two fought a legendary battle that forced the hero to open the 7th gate, performing his daytime tiger technique. While it put an enormous strain on his body, it defeated the Akatsuki member and saved the Jinchuriki from grave harm. 5. Shikamaru vs. Haiden gave Asuma's death closure. Kakuzu and Haiden made a brilliant combination since both of them were incredibly resilient. The former possessed 4 hearts that needed to be destroyed before he died. And the latter was effectively immortal, though not invulnerable. After Asuma's death, Shikamaru worked tirelessly to avenge his sensei. understanding that he could not overcome both villains at once. He lured Haiden away as Kakashi battled Kakuzu, bringing him into a forest trapped with wires and paper bombs. He would leave the cultist buried beneath rubble, forced to endure a bleak and hollow existence for the remainder of his days. 4. Sasori vs. Sakura finally proved the kunoichi's usefulness. Since the series began, critics both in and out of the Naruto universe mentioned Sakura's uselessness. It was a frequent point of her own lamentation. So she trained under Tsunade to become an expert medical ninja. Her progress would be demonstrated at the beginning of Shippuden, where the young kunoichi would rip apart Sasori's puppet army with the skillful assistance of Chiyo. Working together, they overcame their treacherous opponent, using their intimate knowledge of antidotes to cure his toxic poisons. 3. Pain vs. Konoha gave less established shinobi a chance to shine. Though Pain would eventually fight Naruto, he would have to go through the village first. His intrepid war against the Leaf would not go unchallenged. Many of its lesser-known denizens would rise up against him. This included characters such as Ibiki, Ebisu, Konohamaru, and even many of Konoha 11's parents. Kakashi's death was a particularly poignant moment. Even if it would be reversed shortly after the dust had settled. Ultimately, as adamantly as they resisted, their efforts would be wiped away after Nagato destroyed everything in a single almighty push. 2. Pain vs. Naruto proved how far the hero had come. Pain's battle against Naruto would be one of the greatest triumphs the Jinchuriki had in his 700-episode campaign. Not only was he able to conquer the villain's corporeal body, but he also managed to convince him to undo what harm he had caused, at the cost of his own life. Additionally, it fundamentally changed how other characters would perceive the young Uzumaki. Once having reviled him for Kurama and his incorrigible behavior, they now celebrated him as a war hero and the savior to their way of life. 1. Kakashi vs. Obito was a smooth uninterrupted beatdown. Though the Akatsuki itself may have more or less been abandoned by the Fourth Ninja War, Obito, once known as Tobi, was nonetheless its last living member aside from Haiden. His fight against Kakashi in the Kamui dimension is one of the most heartbreaking and intense battles in the entire series. The culmination of a rivalry spanning decades, it wasn't interrupted through filler or dialogue. The only break in combat was to depict the friendship they once had in brief, several seconds intervals.